Chapter 6 Galactic Reverie. The air crackled with tension as Elena Voss and Reland Kale stood their ground, the ancient Nexus artifact pulsing with a faint, otherworldly glow between them. The towering spires of the Arcadian Elders' compound loomed in the distance, a beacon of sanctuary and wisdom, but the path to its safety was fraught with peril. The rival faction, led by the ruthless corporate executive, had tracked their movements and now closed in, their weapons primed and their eyes burning with a single-minded determination. Elena could feel the weight of the Nexus's power pressing down on her, a constant reminder of the immense responsibility they had been entrusted with. "Stand aside, Arcadian," the executive spat, his voice dripping with disdain. "The Nexus belongs to us, and we will stop at nothing to claim it." Ryland's expression hardened, his emerald eyes narrowing with resolve. "You have no right to this relic, nor to the world it was meant to protect. The Nexus is a burden that none should bear lightly, and we will not allow it to fall into the wrong hands." Elena stepped forward, her own determination mirroring Ryland's. "The Nexus represents the potential for great good, but also for unimaginable destruction. We cannot simply hand it over to those who would abuse its power for their own selfish gain." The executive's lips curled into a sneer. "Potential destruction? Your primitive superstitions mean nothing to me, Dr. Voss. The Nexus is a technological marvel, and my company will be the ones to unlock its secrets, whether you like it or not." Ryland's hand tightened on the hilt of his weapon, and Elena could see the conflict raging within him. He knew that a violent confrontation could have devastating consequences, not just for them, but for the entire planet. "Please," Elena pleaded, her voice tinged with desperation. "There must be a way to resolve this without resorting to bloodshed. The Nexus is too powerful to be wielded by those who cannot understand its true nature." The executive's gaze narrowed, and for a moment Elena thought she saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. But it was quickly replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. "Enough of this," he growled, raising his weapon. "The Nexus is mine, and I will take it by any means necessary." As the executive's finger tightened on the trigger, a sudden blur of movement caught Elena's eye. A group of Arcadian natives, their features etched with a mixture of fear and determination, had emerged from the shadows, wielding primitive but formidable weapons. "The Nexus must be protected!" One of them, a tall, lithe figure with piercing blue eyes, shouted. "You will not desecrate our sacred heritage!" The executive hesitated, his weapon wavering as he was faced with the unexpected opposition. Ryland seized the opportunity, his voice ringing out with authority. "Stand down, all of you!" he commanded, his gaze sweeping over the Arcadians and the expedition team. "Violence will only beget more violence. We must find a peaceful solution to this crisis." Elena felt a surge of admiration for Ryland's composure and diplomatic approach, even in the face of such a volatile situation. She stepped forward, her own voice joining his. "Please, let us discuss this rationally. The Nexus is a powerful and delicate artifact. We must proceed with caution and respect for the sake of Arcadia and all who call this world home." The executive regarded them with a mixture of frustration and begrudging respect. "Very well," he said, his tone clipped. "We'll hear you out, but know this, the Nexus will be ours, one way or another." Ryland nodded, his expression grim. "Then let us talk. The fate of Arcadia hangs in the balance." As the two groups faced each other in tense silence, Elena felt a growing sense of unease. The Nexus had awakened something primal and dangerous, and she knew that the battle for its control was far from over. Steeling herself for the challenges ahead, Elena followed Ryland and the Arcadian natives, determined to find a way to protect the Nexus and the world she had come to cherish. The fate of Arcadia, and perhaps the entire galactic community, rested on their ability to navigate the treacherous political and ethical minefield that had been laid before them. The ancient compound, once a bastion of serenity and wisdom, had now become a battlefield where the future of an entire world hung in the balance. As the expedition team and the rival faction faced off, Elena knew that the true test had only just begun. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The Arcadian Elders compound was a study in contrasts, its serene gardens and elegant spires belying the tension that permeated the air. Elena and Relan stood before the assembled elders, the nexus resting between them, its pulsing glow a constant reminder of the power they had been entrusted with. Elena, the matriarch of the Arcadian Council, regarded them with a measured gaze, her piercing blue eyes betraying a hint of concern. "You have done well to bring the nexus to us, Rylan Kale," she said, her voice rich and resonant. "But the battle is far from over. The rival faction will not rest until they have seized control of this ancient relic." Relan nodded, his expression grave. "I know, honored elders. The Nexus represents a grave danger not just to Arcadia but to the entire galaxy. Its power is beyond our full comprehension, and we cannot risk unleashing its capabilities no matter the cost." Elena stepped forward, her scientific curiosity warring with the weight of responsibility. "But honored elders, surely there must be a way to harness the Nexus's power, to use it for the betterment of all. The potential breakthroughs we could achieve, the lives we could save, it's too great an opportunity to ignore." Elena's gaze hardened and she raised a hand, silencing Elena's impassioned plea. "You speak of great possibilities, Dr. Voss, but the Nexus is not merely a technological marvel. It is a relic of an ancient civilization, one whose downfall was likely precipitated by the misuse of such power." Rylan nodded in agreement, his expression grim. "The Arcadian elders have passed down warnings about the Nexus for generations. They believe it was responsible for the destruction of a once thriving society, a cataclysmic event that nearly eradicated our people." Elena felt a chill run down her spine, the gravity of their words sinking in. "Then you're saying that the Nexus could be capable of destroying an entire world?" Elena's nod was solemn, her gaze heavy with the weight of responsibility. "Indeed, Dr. Voss, the Nexus is a burden that none should bear lightly. Its power is beyond our full understanding, and the consequences of its misuse could be catastrophic." Elena's mind raced, the implications of their decision weighing heavily on her. She understood the elders' caution, their desire to protect Arcadia from the dangers of the Nexus. But the scientist in her yearned to unlock the artifact's secrets, to harness its power for the betterment of all. "Honored elders," she began, her voice tinged with a hint of desperation, "surely there must be a way to study the Nexus, to understand its true nature and potential without risking the destruction of Arcadia." Elena's expression softened, and she placed a reassuring hand on Elena's shoulder. "I understand your desire, Dr. Voss, but the weight of this decision is not one to be taken lightly. The Nexus is a burden that must be borne with the utmost care and responsibility." Rylan stepped forward, his gaze resolute. "The elders have spoken, Elena. The Nexus must be safeguarded, hidden from those who would seek to abuse its power. We cannot risk the fate of Arcadia or the galaxy on the possibility of unlocking its secrets." Elena felt a wave of frustration wash over her, but she knew that Relan and the elders were right. The Nexus was too powerful, too dangerous to be wielded without the utmost caution and understanding. "Then what do you propose we do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elena's expression grew somber. "The Nexus must be hidden, its power kept from those who would seek to control it. We will conceal it deep within the crystalline mountains where it will remain safe, and its secrets will be guarded by the Arcadian elders for generations to come." Relan nodded, his own resolve mirroring the elders' determination. "It is the only way, Elena. We cannot risk the Nexus falling into the wrong hands, no matter the personal cost." Elena felt a pang of regret, her scientific curiosity warring with the weight of responsibility. But she knew that they had no choice. The fate of Arcadia, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. "Very well," she said, her voice steady. "Let us make the necessary preparations. The rival faction will not rest until they have seized the Nexus, and we must act quickly to ensure its safety." The elders nodded, their expressions grave, and they set to work, coordinating the transport and concealment of the ancient artifact. Elena and Rylan stood side by side, their differences and personal agendas set aside in the face of a greater purpose. As the Nexus was carefully loaded onto a specialized transport vehicle, Elena couldn't help but glance back, her heart heavy with the knowledge that they were abandoning the opportunity to unlock its secrets. But she knew that the risks were too great, and the responsibility they had been entrusted with was far too important to ignore. "Do you truly believe this is the right decision, Ryland?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the hum of the transport's engines. Ryland's gaze met hers, and she saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes, quickly replaced by a steely determination. "I do, Elena. The Nexus is a burden that none should bear lightly, and we cannot risk its power falling into the wrong hands. Arcadia's future and the future of the galaxy depends on our ability to protect it." Elena nodded, her own resolve hardening. "Then let us ensure that it remains safe, no matter the cost." As the transport vehicle rumbled to life and began its journey into the heart of the crystalline mountains, Elena and Ryland turned their attention to the task at hand, their minds focused on the challenges that still lay ahead. The rival faction would not give up easily, and they knew that the battle for the Nexus was far from over. But with the Arcadian elders at their side, and their own unwavering determination, they were determined to find a way to safeguard the ancient relic and protect the future of Arcadia. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The crystalline mountains rose before them, their towering peaks capped with shimmering snow and their slopes crisscrossed with winding paths. The transport vehicle navigated the treacherous terrain with precision, its occupants on high alert for any signs of pursuit. Elena gazed out the window, her mind racing with a myriad of questions and concerns. The Nexus, safely secured in its containment unit, pulsed with a faint ethereal glow, a constant reminder of the power they had been entrusted with. "Are you sure this is the best course of action, Ryland?" she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "Hiding the Nexus away, keeping its secrets from the rest of the galaxy. It feels like we're denying the world the chance to unlock its potential." Ryland's expression was grim, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "I understand your concerns, Elena. Believe me, I've wrestled with this decision every step of the way, but the risks are simply too great. The Nexus is a burden that none should bear lightly, and we cannot risk its power falling into the wrong hands." Elena nodded, her own resolve wavering. I know. But the thought of all the breakthroughs we could achieve, the lives we could save, it's a heavy price to pay." Ryland reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. "I know, Elena, but the fate of Arcadia, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rests on our shoulders. We cannot afford to fail." Before Elena could respond, a sudden commotion erupted from the rear of the transport, drawing their attention. The rival faction had caught up to them, their weapons blazing as they closed in. "They found us!" one of the Arcadian guards shouted, his voice tinged with panic. Ryland's expression hardened, and he turned to the driver. "Increase speed now. We must reach the concealment site before they catch up to us." The transport surged forward, its engines roaring as it navigated the winding mountain roads. Elena gripped the edge of her seat, her heart pounding in her chest as she watched the rival faction's vehicles closing in. Suddenly, a brilliant flash of light erupted from the Nexus's containment unit, casting an ethereal glow over the entire vehicle. The pursuing vehicles were thrown off course, their drivers disoriented by the intense energy surge. "What's happening?" Elena cried, her eyes wide with shock. Ryland's expression was one of equal parts awe and trepidation. "The Nexus, it's reacting to the threat somehow. Its power is manifesting to protect itself." The transport vehicle pressed on, the Nexus's glow pulsing in time with the pounding of Elena's heart. She knew that they were running out of time, that the rival faction would not give up so easily. As they rounded a sharp bend, a hidden entrance in the mountainside came into view, its ornate doors guarded by a contingent of Arcadian warriors. Ryland gestured to the driver, and the transport vehicle slowed to a halt, its occupants spilling out onto the snow-covered ground. "Quickly, get the Nexus inside," Ryland commanded, his voice ringing with authority. "We must seal the entrance before the rival faction catches up to us." The Arcadian guards sprang into action, carefully transferring the Nexus's containment unit through the ornate doors and into the hidden sanctuary beyond. Elena watched, her heart pounding, as the doors began to close, sealing the Nexus away from the outside world. But just as the entrance was about to fully seal, a barrage of energy bolts rained down, narrowly missing the escaping team. The rival faction had caught up to them, their weapons trained on the closing doors. "No!" Elena cried, her voice laced with desperation. "We can't let them stop us." Reland's expression was one of grim determination. "We won't," he said, raising his own weapon. "I'll hold them off. You must get the Nexus to safety no matter what." Before Elena could protest, Reland had already stepped forward, his body a shield between the Nexus and the approaching enemy. The Arcadian guards joined him, their weapons blazing as they engaged the rival faction in a desperate battle. Elena watched, her heart in her throat, as the doors began to close, sealing Reland and the guards inside. Their faces were etched with a mixture of fear and resolve, their eyes conveying a silent message to her. "Go, Elena!" Ryland's voice echoed through the narrowing gap. "Protect the Nexus. Protect Arcadia." With a heavy heart, Elena turned and ran, her feet crunching in the snow as she hurried towards the hidden sanctuary. The sounds of the battle raged behind her, the echoes of weapons fire and the cries of the combatants fading into the distance. As she reached the inner sanctum, Elena paused, her gaze sweeping over the ornate chamber. The Nexus rested at the center, its pulsing glow a beacon in the dimly lit space. "We've done it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The Nexus is safe." But the weight of Ryland's sacrifice and the uncertainty of his fate hung heavy in the air. Elena knew that the battle was far from over, and that the true test of their resolve was only just beginning. With a deep breath, she turned her attention to the Nexus, her mind racing with a myriad of questions and possibilities. The ancient artifact's power had been unleashed to protect itself, and Elena couldn't help but wonder if there was more to its capabilities than they had yet to discover. As she approached the Nexus, its glow intensifying with each step, Elena felt a surge of determination coursing through her veins. Reland had entrusted her with the responsibility of protecting this relic, and she would not let him down. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever difficult choices,